Welcome to the Manuscript Academy podcast,
Brought to you by
a writer
and an agent.
who both believe that education is key
The beauty is the people you meet along the way.
and that community makes all the difference.
Here at the Manuscript Academy, you can learn the skills, make the connections, and have access to experts, all from home.
I'm Julie Kingsley.
And I'm Jessica Sinsheimer.
Put down your pens, pause your word counts, and enjoy.
Hey everyone, we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but you are cordially invited to a free event with us. It is October 10th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and it is all about how you, yes you, can be your own best marketer. And this works whether you are looking for an agent or looking for a publisher, or if you have a publisher and you're out to start that scary journey of promoting your book, getting it out in the world, and yes, while you are an introvert. We hope you can join us totally free. Again, just head to manuscriptacademy.com/Allison with 2 L's to register and get your free ticket. October 10th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there. Hello, friends. We have a very special guest today. Allison Lane is here, and she helps women experts write and launch best-selling nonfiction books that inspire and educate. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we're doing this because people don't know what a big deal they are until they see someone react with, wow, you did that. You wrote this book. You have this program. You spoke on this stage. And if you don't know, you can throw your question in the Manuscript Academy Facebook page, which is free. Just ask, hey, this is what I do. How could I position myself as a leader? Because I think the thing that gets in people's way is they don't want to claim being an expert or being a best-selling author or being a leader or thought leader or a leading voice. They're not ready. But after today, they're going to be.
So one thing, this makes me think of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Are you aware of this? Okay. Folks have the most confidence when they start out and they don't know what they don't know. So the people who don't know what they don't know are like, I'm great. I'm going to be the next bestseller. Here's my phone number. I'm not even going to tell you about my book. Why? Because it's so good. I will jump on Oprah's couch. And then you start to learn the things that you don't know. And then you learn some more. And by the end, you're in your own head, like, I know this enormous list of things I don't know. I must know nothing. And so I see this really interesting paradox where the people who know the most and have worked the hardest are much less confident than the people who did one Google search, spent 30 minutes. I know everything about publishing now. And I think that some of that plays into the comfort level of calling oneself an expert. And we're socialized, especially as creatives, to be like, I'm not an expert. I'm just channeling something bigger than me and it ends up on the page. Or I'm at the whims of the universe and I got lucky. How do you interact with that? You must see it all the time.
My chest is tightening because you just uttered one of the biggest obstacles to people stepping into their genius, the word just. The word just is so diminishing. I'm just this. I'm not an expert. I'm just a professor who speaks at conferences. I don't consider myself an author. I just wrote this book. And you just want to like flick somebody right in the forehead to say, if you could please remove that diminishing attitude and those apologetic words from how you present yourself, because really what you're doing is you're telling the other people who see you as a badass that they're wrong. And it's rude. So if you know 10% more than the next person, you're a leader.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, but why is this in particular to women?
It's
is it
not
actually
it's
rude?
in particular. Well, it is. It's saying you're wrong. I know you see me as an expert, but I'm just this. It's like getting a compliment and saying, oh, this old thing, it's not nice. I don't think it's just women.
I think we are conditioned as humans to conform, to not stand out. And I think that's why it's so incredibly difficult to stand on your own 2 feet in the publishing world. I think Jessica's right.
Well, a few things come to mind. People think the tallest tree gets the axe, so don't stand out. And then there's also, if a friend says something like that, you think, well, I have the full perspective and she's only seeing a curated slice.
Let's dive into this. So, as querying writers, you have to put yourself forward. You have to write that bio and you have to say what you're an expert in or what you do. And you have to own it there on that query letter. Why is there a disconnect when the writer goes to market their book?
Oh, I love this. And this is nonfiction and fiction, people. This is children's books and graphic novels. Your query letter is the distillation, the reduction sauce. It's that balsamic glaze of your book on one page, and it is delicious, but you only need a little.
The balsamic glaze.
Shout out to balsamic glaze. If anybody
Thank
sees
you.
balsamic glaze, go get it.
Just a couple drops, right? So if your query letter is that, then your query letter, we know, is 3 paragraphs. It's your premise, your plot, and then your pro bio. And yes, the letter has an intro and a dismount. And don't spend too much time there because you want people to get to the meat. Premise, plot, pro. When you get to the pro paragraph, that should be the smallest of the 3. Agents and publishers want to know about your book. And they don't want you to start when you're introducing yourself with like, I'm nobody, or I'm a retired teacher, or, what you used to do. I'm a mom of 6. Unless you're writing about being a mom of 6, that's personal detail, but you could say things like, I'm a sought after speaker. I'm an advocate for anti-bullying. Even when you're writing fiction, just think of who you're writing for. We're all in service of someone. Otherwise, the book that you're writing, you would write it and put it in a drawer. You're putting it out there to help people. And this is true of fiction as well. You want people to enjoy this journey or this adventure, even when you're writing sci-fi, which I love. But you do need to think of yourself being introduced on a stage in a way that's relevant and elevates you. And also, this is the worst thing. I've always wanted to write a book. Nobody cares. That is irrelevant to your book pitch. That's like when people go on Shark Tank. They never say about their backstory, well, I've always wanted to go on Shark Tank. We know it's just eating up time and space doing that.
While you were talking, I was thinking we could actually be a very good team where you say, here's the business reason for doing this, the outward part. And then I could see, okay, here's how you internally get yourself there. And I think while you were talking, you alluded to something really important, which is that women are taught to keep the gaze inward, looking at themselves, what they are doing wrong, versus keeping the gaze outward, how their actions can affect other people positively. And if we keep the gaze outward, how can this book help people? Who will be helped by this book? Who will read this book and it will become their favorite? Who will love this gorgeous, perfect autumn evening book? I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it too. And for those thinking, why me? Why this? It's so much easier to do things for other people if you get stuck in that space.
Oh, I'm getting full body chills. So I know we're onto something. When you position yourself as an advocate for fill in the blank, describe the person who want X, but are faced with Y, it's a very, very simple way to draft the one-liner that will become your elevator speech about yourself. And you can say it in one breath.
And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to save 10,000 penguins. It can be, I want to give women the experience of reading Practical Magic on a perfect autumn evening with a spicy cup of tea next door. That's valuable too.
That's so curious because we think of the end reader, like how will you inspire somebody else? How will you delight someone else? How will you teach someone else about a different world? It doesn't really matter as long as you're thinking of that reader. And I think there is a disconnect between the writer writes the first draft for themselves, but that third draft or fourth draft really needs to be for the reader. But just going back to this, Allison, we go through the querying process, but then we push forward into writers standing on that stage, owning themselves as marketers. That's an interesting transition. And it's a brain shift. So can you talk about the brain shift between the two modalities there?
Yes. When people are writing their book, they're doing a lot of learning with peers who are also writing their book. You're looking for encouragement, a thumbs up, keep going. And eventually you have to outgrow the need for the cheerleaders around you to say, like, we approve, keep moving forward. You are the leader of your marketing, and part of that is marketing yourself. For instance, Julie, when we talked about your book and I reached out to you unsolicited and told you what I thought,
It was very helpful. Thank you.
you said, oh, yeah, because this happens in the books. And I was like, yeah, but nobody wants to hear you talk about the plot of your book. At your book launch, we want to sell those books, which you did, which was amazing. But you, as a writer of fiction, are elevating the conversations and the connections that teenagers have in large groups, and how diverse and understanding and conflicted they are. They can't do that for themselves. They're in ninth grade. You are a cheerleader for today's teens. That's what I want to see on your website, my friend. That's how we step forward. When I said that, you were like, oh, I didn't know that, but that's true. I'm not saying I'm going to put a sash on you and say you're the only cheerleader for today's teens, but I think you're comfortable with saying, yes, I am cheering them on. They're so interesting and so smart and savvy. And today's world is complicated, and the language they use, and they understand, they see everything. You say that with such respect. I think that you're okay with that moniker that I've now put on you, correct?
Well, I mean, I'll own that. Thank you. That sounds great.
Another way of putting what you're saying, Allison, and forgive me, I'm just translating into like how my brain interprets everything. So like all the different brain types out there, at least represented by those present, can have a version for them. So to me, what you're saying is think about what you stand for. What's really important to you? What are your values, and what is it you hope your book will accomplish emotionally? Mm-hmm. And going back to that perfect evening with practical magic, because to me that is an absolute vibe that could be a mood board. You're not just giving people a pleasant reading experience. You're giving them imagery they'll refer back to their whole life. How beautiful is that?
You might be writing historical fiction because you love Elizabethan London, or you're a history professor who has spawned a Netflix series, Deborah Harkness and the Discovery of Witches, which is phenomenal. And her new book just came out. She's inviting people to learn about something she's passionate about. She teaches at university level, and she's perplexed and befuddled of how she wrote this book and it became a hit, because she is just, I'm doing the air bunnies, just a professor. But no, people are getting access to and becoming entranced with this Shakespearean view of time walking. Isn't that amazing that she doesn't just say, I'm a professor, which is so diminishing.
And people, agents, still talk about that book a lot. A couple of weeks ago, my agency was giggling about how much tea they drink.
But if you talk
Hooray
about
for tea drinkers.
Right. But if you talk about, like, that's an instant marketing thing, right? You spend all this time talking about tea, and then you go out to launch your book, and then everyone has tea, and it's something everyone can do together, and it unites the common denominator of a space. Really interesting.
Is there a special blend for the book? That'd be so cute.
I'm now to a point where she's getting like tea from a special blend from China that's bold and earthy. So I don't know yet.
But if Harney and Sons made that special tie-in edition tea, I would be all
that would
over
be,
that.
That would be super. Somebody pass it along.
So, Allison, how did you train yourself to think this way? Or did it just always happen? Were you a kid thinking, well, I'm not just a 5-year-old. I am a 5-year-old who's in favor of blank?
I've always been a writer. I was required to write a letter handwritten to my Oma once a week, and she would correct them and send them back. She was a teacher. My mother was an English teacher, and my uncle was a journalism professor. So it's no wonder I love words and specificity of words. As I entered college, and you'd go out and like the music is pumping and I'd be bored stiff, but whatever, that's where you met people. I would play this game in my head of just looking around, and in my head, I'd be thinking everyone has one thing that they are particularly amazing at. And in my head, I would describe it to myself just for fun. I think that helped me see the elevated statement of people, not just, he's compassionate, she's athletic, but more. It's mesmerizing and a little magnetic to put, your finger on the pulse of what makes someone so special. I like doing it. And it's a marketing trick. I did run PR and marketing for Fortune 50 companies for 2.5 decades. And I can tell you, there's nothing sexy about deodorant, but I led PR for the launch of Axe deodorant body spray in the US. And the way that they sell Axe is not by saying it's such a great deodorant. It's a lifestyle brand. It gives young teen boys confidence. We would throw parties that contributed to people coming together, sort of unexpected mixes. If you can market a deodorant for stinky 13-year-old boys, you can find the positive hook in anything.
So it's not functionally, here's what this does. It's here's a story of what your life will be like if you buy this.
Right. The same year, we were launching the Dove campaign for Real Beauty from its inception. So I would go from one meeting to the other and be like, I'm talking about teen boys, and now I'm talking about women, which is a bar of soap, people. That campaign is still going.
Yeah, those were great ads, by the way.
It's a bar of soap. And that is about people loving the skin they're in. Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to. It's about what does an author invite you into? What story about yourself? When you're writing nonfiction, even when you're writing memoir, that memoir is about the story that the reader has about themselves while they're reading it. It's not about you, even if it's the time you went extreme hiking and reacquainted yourself with your identity. Thank you, Cheryl Strayed. That would have been a super boring book if it was titled Extreme Hiking, How I Healed Myself. Wild is so much better because everyone wants to be that. That's all we really want, is to be our true, authentic selves. I like being a chaperone on people's journeys through revealing to themselves what their strength really is.
And people are usually wrong when asked what their book is about.
Well, that's what I was about to say. How do they find the right path?
Well, let's start with why they're wrong. They're still surrounded by a team of other writers, and they're having to explain very tactically what's in their book. It's about a dystopian world where X happens and Y happens. Like, no, it's not. It's about how people relate to each other, even when they're from different cultures. That transcends the book. When you're surrounded by other writers and you're spending a lot of time having to explain the plot, or you're getting feedback on your first line or your query letter, you're asking the wrong people who are learning with you. If they're in the same situation you're in at the same level, they don't know. And when it's time for you to position yourself or write your website, don't hire your neighbor's niece to build your website, and don't pay $4,000 to build your website. You've got to talk to people who have done it before and who are going to make it easy and enjoyable for you. Because once you've written your book or your book proposal, this whole process should be fun. It shouldn't feel like you're sweating to get death in a sprint or a marathon. It should be an enjoyable stroll, and you as the rock star you are.
We did an event a few weeks ago that I absolutely loved. Our panel chose 3, and 3 were at random, and writers had 10 minutes to come up in front of our panel of agents and explain what their book is about. And every time the agents asked questions, by the end of the 10 minutes, we had a completely different answer of what their book was about. And I loved watching that process. Most people go fact first instead of theme first, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, the premise of your book is the universal theme and what you're inviting people into. It's the promise of the book. How will people feel once they've read the book? What will they be able to accomplish? Simply, your book is always doing one of 3 things. You're giving people access to information. That's just awareness. You're helping them believe in something. Once they're aware, they can actually believe in it, or you're helping them act. And sometimes the act is forgiving yourself or enjoying looking at history differently. But in some way, the premise and promise of your book is that first paragraph in the query. You've got to be able to deliver that. What will you want people to feel and believe and do as a result of reading your work? It's exciting when you sort of ask people, set aside what you think is in your book and just talk to me about what do you really want people to be able to do? What do you want them to know? And then that's where the magic happens. When they start riffing that and stop trying to write it down and just talk, they get really passionate, really lively. That's why I record everything. So I can give it to them and say, this is what you said when you were on that rant. That's amazing. That's where the magic is.
Yeah, this summer I've done a bunch of book clubs with my book. It's so cool. I did one last night. And when those people are sitting around and they understand the core of the book, like when you get to that point where you're like, okay, I set out to do this, and then you go and they do it, that reader author connection is so important. Do you have any tips around how to cultivate that?
Well, my daughter is 13. So we're going to talk about your book, Julie, because she is a new teacher this year for English. And he was an accountant for 25 years. And he had always wanted to be a teacher. So he went back to school. This is his third year teaching. And here's what my daughter said. He tells us his whole job is to help us love reading. And I went to back to school night and I stayed after to talk to him because I want a straight A as well. I want a big A+ in that class. And he said, it's hard to get the kids to read because the books we have in the classroom. I was like, aha, I have resources for you. And then I told him about your book. He said, I don't know if I can get the money to get, because he's trying to create book clubs, but people don't read books because they get sold on what happens in the book. Because that's like, do you want to watch the movie where the trailer explains the entire effing thing? Not really, but they do come together when there's a promise of something more and how it relates to their lives, even when you're writing fiction, especially when you're writing fiction, because otherwise you don't have a marketing hook. People don't buy the thing that you're selling. They don't buy the book or get the book from the library when you say, you're going to love it. There's a romance, a villain, and like a special key. And they're like, it's not a way to entice me. In the same vein, when you're going to a restaurant and they say, oh, you're going to love the braise on the chicken. Like, no, I want to know what it's going to feel like to be in the restaurant and what the ambiance is, who I'm going to be surrounded by. And they want to know what they're going to feel. Clubs are like that.
It's interesting because I feel like you are saying many times and many ways that it is the image side of the brain that buys things.
Yes, if it wasn't that, then every book cover would be white with black lettering and we would not need imagery. It would just say book number 263.
Well, I've asked for years for folks to please use more sensory language in their pitch letters. I still remember a steaming lasagna at the start of a pitch. Granted, I probably read it before lunch, but I could picture this steaming lasagna so vividly. And that image stayed with me for days. I don't remember what the rest of the book was about, but do you think that I went back to my email and searched lasagna to find out later? Absolutely, I did. And there are all these studies that say our memory works better with imagery, and that's helpful when I've got 40 queries a day to read. Which one do I remember? How do we appeal to that side of the brain in a pitch letter? And what is the fastest way to give an image of what the book will look like? It's our comps. You said you have some tricks for comps. Everyone's always stressed about comps, please.
Oh, comps are my favorite thing. It's the best way to start your book proposal. Looking at your comps is the best way to develop your author brand. I do have a free resource, which I use myself, and then that's why I provide it, because every author or writer or expert or speaker needs a bio that is a marketing bio. So that you can get at lanelit.com/package. You can see the document I share when I'm submitting to podcasts and conferences. I made a template out of it because I make a template out of everything. And there's also a video where I just walk through, like, here's why it's like this. Because you don't have time to be looking for your marketing materials, but it is so important that you market yourself and that you are in charge of your own marketing. Now, to your question about comps, the way that you find comps is by thinking about your book as hosting a cocktail party. So you're going to invite 5 other books over, and your book needs to make sure that the conversation is lively amongst herself and the 5 other books. So she's not going to invite 2 books that are best friends, because they're going to tell the same stories. They're going to have the same perspective. They've gone on the same vacations together, and one of them always takes center stage. The other one's essentially like a barnacle. You don't need that one. You want to make sure that all of your comps bring something interesting to the conversation. And that's how you develop your comps. You stick within your genre, fiction or nonfiction. But if you're writing a psychology about why relationships succeed, you might want to include a memoir about someone who saved their relationship, and also a prescriptive how-to, and also a history of relationships over time, because that would make an interesting cocktail party. And that also elevates your book beyond your sub genre. The worst thing you can do when you're putting your comps list together is to look at books that deliver the same premise and promise as yours, because then you're just comparing yourself to an A-lister when you're not out there yet. Whether it's a cocktail party or your book is going to be speaking at a conference, let's take a fiction example, and you think that your book can be related to the lack of connection and belonging that teens feel, and it's so important that they do feel connection and belonging, then that conference might be the American Pediatrics Association. They're not going to have another author of fiction for teens on the stage on a panel. They're going to have a psychologist. They're going to have a historian. You want to mash up. And that's how you elevate yourself. And you speak to the people who surround your audience. It's the best way to see how you can break out. You don't get anywhere by looking at the person ahead of you. You've got to be looking at the horizon. We know that the people listening to the Manuscript Academy podcast, they're a cut above. They're in the 1% of people who are writing and should be authors, and their work should be in the world. Don't start small and compare yourself to people who are just like you. You're already a big deal, so own it.
We have to say that at every panel, that this is not average. Yeah. This is not what agents are seeing in the slush pile. We have to be like, okay, agent guest, please back me up. This is not average. Most of what we get is, dear agent, I hate agents. Guess you'll do. Here's my phone number. 6.
Oh my gosh.
Or just more of a neutral, like, here's my book. It's about this. Give me a call. There's a lot of very neutral, vague, bland, not particularly well-researched stuff out there. And people psych themselves out completely unnecessarily. They think everyone else is perfect and they're the only one who's not.
I mean, we're so lucky to see the work we see all the time.
Yeah.
The people are so talented. And often it's just these tiny tweaks that make all the difference. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I heard that story, I made these changes, I got a request. I made these changes, I got an agent. I made these changes. It's just getting yourself there. And I do think, just going back to the writing part, you're just always just hedging yourself forward. And then once the marketing hits, it's kind of a blast off. I feel like you're just like, everything's so slow and everything's so slow. And then you're shot through this cannon and you're just like, wow.
Through a cannon into new territory.
Mm-hmm. And like for a teacher or a doctor, you don't have to really market yourself. You just kind of like go and do your job every day, and all of a sudden you have to talk about yourself, talk about your work, talk about your upcoming work and how much to share. And then you have to do the social media, and then you need to do the live events, and then you have to organize swag. And then it's doing that while also doing your day job and parenting and everything else. So I think it's such an interesting addition to start talking about marketing here at the Manuscript Academy and what's next. Because we talk about tools in our toolbox, and this is a tool we haven't talked a whole lot about. And I'm kind of excited to play around with the idea of that.
I agree. And I also want to challenge something that you said.
Oh, please.
Yes. I have a different opinion about you write this and then you're presented with this that you have to market yourself. And if you put your proposal together the way that I'm saying, if you put your query together the way that I'm saying, that you won't feel like you're now starting at square one. Now you have to learn everything about marketing and that you have to do all of the things that you just mentioned. You don't have to have swag. You don't have to do live events.
I mean, I would say that having like a tattoo around your book is the coolest thing ever. Push it back.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that does sound great. But the thing is, you get to decide. The thing that gives people the most panic and the incidence of the full body sweats is when they don't make choices. And then throughout their publishing journey, while their publisher is saying, hey, could you make these changes? And then they're presented with people saying to them, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Don't you think you should get a t-shirt with your book cover on it? You don't need to sell that kind of merch. People don't want that. What they want is you in a way that feels good to you. The best way to enjoy your whole publishing journey is to make choices at the beginning, because there are certainly 3 phases of any book launch. But if you do it wisely, like a big brand marketer, because you are the brand and your book is a product, it is one way for people to interact with you. But you know what's never going to change? You, because you are the brand, right? You are the Dove campaign, but the soap is the product. So you are the brand as the author, your book is the product, but also maybe you're going to speak at a conference and that's the product. Maybe someone's going to want to have a one-on-one with you. You're going to give them advice on what they should do with their book. That's another product. See what I mean? So you are the umbrella. You get to make choices about what you're going to do to support your book and your brand so that you can integrate it into your life and not feel like, I hope the world stops spinning so I can just get ahead. There's that word just again. We want this journey to be exciting and enjoyable, and we want it to work. So make the choices up front. I have a checklist that you can have. It's free on my website. It's Lane Lit, like literature.com/launch. It's 3 phases of what you should be doing at each phase, whether your book comes out in 3 weeks or 3 months or an entire year. 3 phases, what to do when and what decisions. The great thing is do that and you will end up creating fewer but bigger wins for yourself. Nobody wants to feel like Lucy in the chocolate factory. Has she only prepared?
To be fair, the conveyor belt was incredibly fast.
The conveyor belt was unfair. Yes.
I mean, a lot of what people ask authors to do now is unfair.
Right. And they're all a surprise. We'd like you to put together a book description for the sales catalog, but we're not going to show you a sales catalog or an example. And today's Tuesday, but you're teaching school today and tomorrow, but we need it on Thursday. What? No, that is the worst. It feels like a test that you have no way of succeeding at. We want you to be able to talk about your book, but no media training. Don't worry about it. I media train everybody. You can nail your interview because you are the brand. I want to make sure that people know whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction. You get to decide what you're going to do. You're going to decide what feels good to you, and you're going to feel confident doing it. So when someone says, oh, you didn't get mugs made with your face on them, you can say, no, that was an option. I decided not to do that. And that way you don't have to then feel like, oh my God, should I have done that? No, you don't need to do that.
Why does everyone have an opinion?
They're really trying to be helpful, but how it comes out is like a gotcha moment. And you have to do the conversational math in your head to translate what came out of their mouth to what their positive intent is. I saw this. It seemed like a good idea for this author. Would that work for you? Thought I'd pass it along. That's what they mean to say. But the way it comes out is that's working. And did you do it? Because if you didn't, then you've decided that your book's not going to work. And that feels lousy. Authors who have books coming out in 2025, they're all getting together. They're all in a Facebook group or a Slack group or a Discord community together so that they can have accountability partners. However, they're learning from each other, but they don't know anything. So they hear something like, oh, you know what my friend over here did, and it really worked for her. She's created a YouTube channel and she's doing YouTube chats every day. Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. An everyday thing? No, don't do that. But when you hear it, it sounds like, well, this is the new way. You can't be taking your marketing advice from people who've never marketed.
What is that one thing that we could be doing for ourselves right now that's going to help us in the future?
Or is it one size fits all?
Oh, that's true.
What do you mean one size fits all?
Well, you said something really important a few minutes ago. Your audience wants you to be out there, but they also want you to do it in a way that feels good for you. Not everything is going to feel good to every author.
Right. Like many times when I work with authors, they say, oh, well, I understand I need to go on a book tour, but which cities do you think I should go to? I'm like, who told you need to go on a book tour? Well, I just assumed. I'm like, well, you assumed a very expensive cross-country trip for yourself. And then I just tell them, like, this is how we're going to make money for you so that you get all your hotel and travel paid for. But that doesn't work for everybody. You don't have to be in person. You can do all your Top Sun video. You can speak at schools through Zoom. You get to decide what's right for you and what feels good and what reaches the audience who's already eager for your message. You don't have to go hunting for them. They're together always. People come together because they have common goals. They have common obstacles. They have common dreams. They common adventures, and they're loud about it. So you've got to do something that feels right for you and that will reach them. To your question, Julie, two things. There are two things that you have to do as your first step. One is internal and one is external. So internally, say to yourself, I am a big deal. Say it in the present. You don't get to give us all the reasons why you're trying. I'm trying to be an author. I am an author. Accept it. If you have put a pencil to paper, if you have transcribed something into Otter, which is a free app, then you're an author already. So congratulations, you. I am an author. I am a big deal. Absorb it. Let it sink in. And then the second thing that you need to do is a physical action is to draft your one-liner about you. And what you're going to end up with is a fill in the blank of I am a fill in the blank advocate, leader, community builder, cheerleader for. You are something. You are shining a light on something. You are helping something. So I am whatever it is that you are for this type of person who wants this, but has this obstacle. So that's what you're going to end up with. And the way that you think of that is picture yourself on a picnic bench. Somebody sits down and you chit chat, and there they share with you that they want something, need something, and they're perplexed. You wouldn't launch right in to say, well, I wrote a book about that. You would say, I understand. I think that's important too. I am a liaison for urban adventures because elementary school kids thrive and learn when adventuring, but in an urban environment, it's really hard to figure out. So if that's you, I'm not even thinking of somebody, but if that's you, now you have your bio. Now you know that one sort of intro, and you can say it in one breath. When planning your book launch, consider the time between when you have a book deal, the day you sign a contract, you start planning your launch, even if you're planning only in your head, because the sooner you make decisions, the sooner the rest of the actions will be fewer, will be clearer. You'll feel more in control and you'll enjoy the ride a lot more. Your launch is not a single day. It's not a birthday party that if you miss it, it's over. Your launch is an extended ride because the person who finds out about your book today, it's new to them today. And so that's what I mean. Plan ahead so that nothing is a fire drill. Factoring in all your life decisions. And again, if you want to get started on sketching out your launch, grab my launch phases. It'll help. It's at lanelit.com/launch. I hope that that's helpful and that you can see that once you start stepping into your role as a leading voice for the topics and the themes you write about, you will feel freed. You will feel strength and confidence to step into whatever feels good for you. And I believe in you. You're a big freaking deal.
I love that.
Yeah, I hope everyone out there does feel like a big freaking deal. Maybe if they come with us and hang out with you, Allison, on October 10th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, they will have an opportunity for that. We are talking about how to make yourself look like a good investment, not just to agents, but that too, to publishers, to authors, to readers, all of the people you need in your ecosystem. Allison, tell us what this event will be like.
This training, how to be your own best marketer, whether you're querying, agented, or about to launch, you need to know how to position yourself and your book as valuable investments and good partners. You can stand out to publishers and readers and bookstores and libraries and special events organizations. During this training, you will learn why your brand matters and how to conduct a personal brand audit. And if you think, I don't have a personal brand, don't worry about it. During this time, you will learn what you need to do in order to take those first few steps. You'll also learn about the cost of hosting events, what it means to a bookstore that you come ready to make everything easy for them. And I'll also give you a bunch of assets that I only give folks I work with, but we're amongst friends. And you'll also learn how to set up creative book events that go way beyond the traditional bookstore. I want to make sure that everyone leaves there knowing how to present your book and yourself as a smart investment, because when you do that, it becomes repeatable and you're setting the stage for your future success. This training is October 10th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 5:30 p.m. Pacific and everywhere in between. It's free. Free is good when it's full of value. And this training, you're going to get so much out of it. You're going to learn how to position yourself and your book as valuable investments, not just for yourself and your reader, but for the partners and the publisher and the stores and the events that see you as someone that can support them and help them as well. I hope that you'll join us. Again, it's free October 10th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, I can't wait for this. It's going to be an exciting night. And no matter where you are with your publishing journey, this is going to be helpful to you. Another tool in your toolbox.
And again, you can get your free ticket at manuscriptacademy.com/marketing. Okay, listeners, you have learned so much. We want to give you a treat. We mentioned balsamic glaze at the beginning of the episode. If you live in the continental United States and you're curious about balsamic glaze, send an email to academy@manuscriptwishlist.com with, again, balsamic glaze in the subject line, and the first person gets a bottle from us because, honestly, you need this in your life.
You can't miss balsamic glaze in your life. I love it. I love everything about the Manuscript Academy, and that so many people are finding their path to seeing their work in the world because of this podcast, the Academy, and this community.
Thank you, Allison. I can't wait for the event. It's going to be great. Thank you for doing this. It's a lovely thing to do for the community.
We are so glad that you joined us. And as always, we appreciate your feedback. Just head on over to the iTunes store and let us know what you think. It not only helps us make this podcast be the best it can be, but it also affects our ratings within the iTunes platform.
We'd love to hear from you. If you're feeling brave and want to submit your page for our First Pages podcast, you can send it to academy at manuscriptwishlist.com with First Pages Podcast in the subject line. We'd also just love to hear from you.
And if you'd like to learn more about the Manuscript Academy and everything we have to offer, just jump on over to manuscriptacademy.com.